Hi, welcome back to Marketplace Growth by Accoil Analytics. Today, we're talking about buying software. This is something that we're going through right now as a startup, and we've got a simple four-step framework for you to consider and how you can think about these new tools when you need to buy them. All right, we'll be back with that list right after the intro. Hi, my name is Peter Preston, and I'm joined by Kate Caldecott today, and we're talking about a four-step framework that you can use to consider the next tool that you're going to buy for your business. How you doing, Kate?
I'm great. Thank you. Bit tall out, but I'm great.
So before we hit record today, Kate, we were talking about buying tools. We constantly are looking at, new, well, I shouldn't say we, myself and maybe one of our other business partners are constantly looking at tools, shiny objects, and, maybe or maybe not getting distracted by them. But you mentioned that you have a four-step, sort of like a mental model that you use when assessing or thinking about buying a new tool. And I thought it would be really helpful, A, for us to talk about that, but then B, maybe that's something helpful that if you're watching today, that could be helpful for you too. So we're going to go through that. I'm just going to start going through them. And if you want to just weigh in with your thoughts, that would be super helpful. So the first one, Kate, that you mentioned is how easy is it to install? What's your criteria for ease and installation?
In terms of how much time is it going to take to get it into place? So, for example, are we going to need engineers, sprint time? Are we going to need a heavy lift in terms of reading all the documentation? How difficult is the functionality to learn? There's simple through to hard in the continuum. So really just getting a sense of that. And for me, underneath it all is, what's the problem it's solving? What's the challenge it's addressing? And how important into that challenge, just getting it solved for the business. And that really dictates my appetite, I would say, for how much I'm willing to lean in on the complexity.
Yeah. Which is a good segue into number two, which is how easy is it to learn? And you and I have worked together for a while. We've definitely run into tools that sort of make you sit back and scratch your head a little bit, or at least I have. When you say how easy is it to learn, when you said that, what I was thinking about is role specific, right? So like for me, on the sort of go-to-market side of the business, is this applicable to my role? Can I learn it? Is the documentation there sort of targeted at me, not just a technical person, but maybe a go-to-market person? Not that you can't be both. But how do you think about, and what do you look for as a signal that it might be easy to learn?
Well, for a start, I'm probably thinking about it in a broader framework. I'm meaning how easy is it for the organisation to learn, and how much is it going to slow us down or speed us up in terms of addressing our business objectives. And so I'm happy if a tool's going to be that critical to what we do, I'm happy for us as a team to spend learning it. And then in terms of, for me at the moment, for example, with all the tools we're taking on board, I'm deliberately selective about how well and how deep I learn different tools. And it's exactly based on what you said, Pete, depending on the role. So I don't need to learn specific tools very, very deeply because it's not my main game.
It's not my game.
It's not my main focus. But if it is, I'm going to get really good at using this tool well. And getting used to using the new features too as they roll them out.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point, is that who's going to be using it and reflecting on that. So not just me as, say, the main buyer at a company. It's got to be, who am I buying it for on the team?
And I think the other component to all of this, Pete, is there's timings. Is if you are flat chat and you are struggling to keep up, for example, like you've been getting a series of bugs, or you've got customer dissatisfaction, or you're just getting high customer support volumes. If you're literally, if your business is under a bit of, stress isn't the right word, but if you're actually working harder, you've got to be really careful about when you introduce a tool and when you don't, because everyone's just going to go, oh God, not another one.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that's come up recently in conversations that we've had with vendors and friends that are building companies, and just the switching cost is not necessarily how expensive a tool is, which we'll talk about in a second. It's also what's the overlap and how long does that actually take? Like realistically, how long will it take to switch CRMs? And the estimates that we've gotten because we have looked at different CRMs recently, the estimates that we've gotten are on average about 2 months of overlap between when the moment that we decide that we're going to switch CRMs, give it 2 months, and then we'll be fully switched over. And we're a small team, so you can imagine the impact of that on a bigger company.
Yeah, and I think that was the reason why we decided not to move, because we actually recognised our business, being a startup, is us for finding, good messaging and product market fit. So that's our main game. It's not squeezing out the last 20% of efficiency of a go-to-market motion,
Yeah.
So I think you've got to be really pragmatic, people, really pragmatic.
Yeah. So I guess, who we're really talking to in this is smaller teams that have a lot to, that the cost is actually pretty high if you're going to do that and spend that time switching tools that are important to the business.
And I mean, when we were at Atlassian, you used to have your process of being able to, and there were the policy rules of what you could have and what you couldn't have, et cetera, and there was a much more formal process. What we're talking about here is not that. It's not that, people. We're just talking about smaller teams, how they deal with complexity, and don't get hoodwinked by the latest shiny toy.
I think you're talking to
me. I
say
say
this
because I'm always saying this to all of you guys, aren't I?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I feel seen.
The old dragnet she is.
No comment. I'm going to keep us moving now. All right. Number 3 is how expensive. What is it actually going to cost? And I think sometimes it's not very clear, is it? You look at a website and the pricing may be published. And even then it's still a surprise when you get the actual invoice from a vendor.
Oh, did you hear me just go, ugh, yes, I hate complicated pricing. Just give me how much it's going to cost me and let me know my upside and my downside. And if I can do 2 years, once I've tested the tool, then give me that. And can I get a discount for that? Which I had that discussion with a vendor yesterday, shall I say? It's exactly the conversation I had.
I think asking for discounts is always a good idea.
Or an extra feature that's in the next level up. Can I have just that feature for free?
That's an interesting point, actually, is that, would that unlock enough value for you? So there's more to consider than just the face value or the cost that's published on the website is, exactly that. I think, how do you feel about negotiating in those circumstances? You said you just did it, but I think a lot of people, don't think about it. I know I don't necessarily think about going back and asking those questions. And then B, conversations that I've had recently, people are kind of afraid to do it. Like, I don't want to be seen as cheap. But how do you feel about negotiating around, say, like published pricing on a website?
I think it just depends on the tool and how much. So if it's a big lean in, for me, if there's a big cost to it, but something that's cheaper, I don't bother. I just get on with it. I mean, it all depends on your business objective. So I'm very business objective. Is this going to get us another sale? Is this going to help us work faster so we get a better sale? Is this going to help our pre-sales process, i.e. we have a certain thing and can demonstrate we do a certain trust characteristic, for example? Then what's my best pathway of getting that into place?
So there's actually a lot to consider when you think about how expensive something is going to be. Last thing that we talked about was, what is the value that this brings to our business and what is the ROI? How do you go about considering what the value is? I mean, obviously some problems are very pointy and very specific, right?
Yeah.
Like if you say, I need to do X and this solves exactly that, then it's pretty straightforward. But what's the mental math that you're doing when you ask that question?
So for me, it comes down to, does it make us more profit? Does it sell us more product? It's almost like the P's, really. Does it help our people? And I would be saying in terms of our brand. So I there's kind of some metrics that are your underlying. If you get them right in your business, then you're probably away, which is a good trusted brand, a stable workforce that knows what they're doing and they have the right tools to do their work well, that you are hitting on your financial targets and you're hitting on your customer targets and their satisfaction. You're basically helping you to build a good business that's going to last.
So you're saying that you're looking at a tool in terms of how will it support all of that?
Yeah. And some levers are more important than others. So if we were doing a matrix, and you would kind of go, well, it's down here, but that's okay because in the scheme of things. So, sometimes I sacrifice capability just for speed and getting something up and happening so you learn from it. So to me, there's a learning tax on onboarding and then there is a strategic capability that you're building. Makes it sound a lot more fancy than it is, though.
Yeah, we're veering into a more complicated mental model here, aren't we?
Yeah, but it's kind of the way I chug along, I chug through all those pathways and come out the other way going, yep, agree with you, tick, yep, let's get it, nah, yeah.
Well, I think the way that we do it often as well is that we are talking to the co-founders, and that's kind of the checkpoint, right? And I appreciate that you have more of a model than maybe Simon and I have exercised in the past. So the mental model for buying a new product, 4 things: how easy is it to install? how easy is it to learn? How expensive is it really? And I think there's a few aspects or dimensions to that expense too, just not in terms of strictly dollars, but also how expensive is it going to be for us to maybe hit pause on some things while we implement this? And then what is the expected value or the return on investment of that product going to be to our company? I don't think we've really haven't done a whole lot of formal assessments like this. We've done it maybe once or twice, but for the most part, the tools that we're buying aren't in that 5-digit range per year. So we're not going to that rigor. But by and large, I think it's really important that, and I think it's been good for us that we've actually had these experiences recently where, yes, that new tool does something that we want to do, but the cost is actually too high. It'll slow us down. And to your point that you mentioned there, like, will this actually help us grow the business is a really important question to ask. Anything to wrap us up on, Kate?
No, I think that's it from me.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, that's it. Kate, you want to send us off?
Bye, everybody, and more sales to you.
See you next time.